Welcome to the second day of the conference, and we'll start out this morning with a panel made up of 3 speakers that used to be students here quite recently, English Studies program. Just 3 years ago, I think 2 years ago, they graduated, and then they took the master's course in comparative literature here at this department, organized here at the faculty. And now 2 of them are already working on their PhDs related to fantasy literature. Andoni Cosillo is the first speaker here this morning, and he did his investigation, his research during the master's program on trees, and he will be presenting in Tolkien's work, and he will be presenting his findings in a different shape today. J.R.R. Tolkien's Tree World, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you will be saying regarding this topic.
Thank you very much. So, good morning. So today I will be talking about forests, woods and trees in J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. So the presentation will have the following structure. I will start by talking about the research that has been done, recent research on the field. Then I will continue with a section on trees and forests in cultural imagination. Next, Tolkien and his 20th century attitudes towards nature will be discussed, followed by a comparative study between Mirkwood and the Wildwood. Next, the testimony of Trebbe will be analyzed. And then one of my favorite sections, forests and woods and its habitability will be discussed, followed by the White Tree of Gondor, which is basically the cornerstone of this kingdom. Finishing the presentation with some conclusions drawn from this research. So, talking about general bibliography about the topic, Harrison was the first one to address the relationships and the interaction between forests and woods and humans. He was not really the first one, since Giambattista Vico many years ago talked about this. However, he is more specific and more to the point in his volume. Then Heyman, 10 years later, described the importance that trees and forests have had in human history. With regards to a specific bibliography, Tom Shippey was the first to describe the presence of nature in Tolkien's works and how these are very important for him in his narration, especially in The Lord of the Rings. And then Dickinson and Evans were the first to dedicate a whole monograph to this. Campbell also expanded further Shippey's ideas, and he just continued developing the idea that Tolkien's theories about nature can be applicable in our own days. This project and this research aims to cover some aspects which have been untouched by the academia. These are other fictional woods comparable to Tolkien's, the avant-garde perspective of trees analyzed from the viewpoint of testimonial narrations, the role of tribute in serving as a vehicle, transmitting Tolkien's green policy, woods and forests in Middle-earth as dwelling places, and then the role of the White Tree of Gondor. In order to do that, the following methodology will be employed, which is kind of miscellaneous bunch. Testimony and trauma, cultural history, comparative literature, eco-criticism, and cultural studies. And the aim of this research was always from a Western European perspective, literary and cultural, to show Tolkien's portrayal of trees and forests and his green agenda and the interactions between humans and nature, as well as future environmental problems. So the trees in many cultures and religions have always been connected to divinities. The tree is one of the most used symbols according to the Dictionary of Symbols. And civilization and the forest have always been, since the beginnings of time, in opposition. Syndicated in letters, Tolkien was a great lover of trees. He also disliked the maltreatment of them. As he himself said, quote, "In all my works, I take the part of trees as against all their enemies." He also rejected modern technological world, preferring nature over this. Trees are a central topic in the Lord of the Rings, as he himself claimed in another letter. And although this paper will not concentrate on Ithilien, it is one of the strongest ecological claims of the novel. Most of the lands have great importance in this respect, but Ithilien, the thesis that he puts forward is that the land has been damaged, and nevertheless trees are described as indestructible. Plants grow over the remains of battle and destruction, and not even the statues of kings or the cities will outlast nature. Nature is above good and evil. It would just last everything. So this offers a non-human vision of nature's maltreatment. So then, now it's time for a comparative study between Kenneth Graham's The Wildwood and Tolkien's Mirkwood. Forests and woods have become familiar to us, everyday objects to a certain extent. We don't get any type of, we should say, we don't perceive them as grand as in the past. And Tolkien thinks that this appropriation has resulted in dullness, boredom. One of his ideas is to recover everyday objects so that its true essence can be regained. This process is called recovery. The purpose is to show an object in a new light, making it attractive, but potentially real. And recovery is necessary to understand Tolkien's aims as a writer. Kenneth Graham, 30 years earlier, had also recovered the woods in The Wind and the Willows. However, there is a certain difference between Graham's Wildwood and Tolkien's Mirkwood. In the Wildwood, the danger is not real. Mole, the protagonist, when he enters the wood, he does not really see anything. He just listens to some sounds, but he himself claims that he's not sure if they are real. Instead, in Mirkwood, whenever they enter the wood, they can see black squirrels, there are cobwebs hanging from tree to tree, and later on they are attacked by giant spiders and even by the elves. So the danger is something feasible. So in conclusion, it can be said that whilst Graham is bent on entertaining his readers with a cozy, nostalgic, and sometimes sentimental tale, redolent of past traditions but overtly impossible, Tolkien's idea of fairy stories is that they can be potentially as genuine as the real world, in the sense that they may put the reader back in touch with a primordial reality, retrieved from the past through the art of storytelling. This reality includes the possibility of failure and even death. And it is in the setting of Mirkwood where this first becomes apparent. The following section will be devoted to the testimony of Trebeard. Well, there are certain characteristics that testimony needs to fulfill, as described by Achugar, Agamben, Jimeno, and Sánchez Zapatero. Thanks to his anthropomorphic figure, I imagine that you have watched the movie, so you can more or less imagine the figure of Trebeard. It's easy to empathize humans with him, since he has an anthropomorphic shape. Through Trebeard is an element that allows Tolkien to express his views on nature. Trebeard is redolent of 20th century, the First and Second World War, always from a non-anthropocentric perspective. As you know, in the First World War, especially, not only many people died, but also the landscape was incredibly eroded and destroyed. He's not only a witness, he's also a negotiator and an ally. And this is triggered by Merry and Pippin. Their encounter triggers his revolutionary instinct. Tolkien defended trees unconditionally, as he himself claimed, quote, "Every tree has its enemy, few an advocate." And humans and nature have to be united to face the environmental crisis, because in the book, in The Lord of the Rings, when the Ents disappear, the humans may have to face the preservation of the land on their own. Well, this is now my favorite section, forests and woods and their habitability. With regards to what Strabo said in Harrison, nature and civilization have always been in opposition. Strabo was a Greek geographer, so you can imagine that this was described very early in history. Vico, many years later, also claimed that humanity and the forest are mutually exclusive entities. However, certain historical characters, real people, have shown that living in the forest is possible, as well as modern fantasy that shows that dwelling in the forest to a certain extent, it can be possible. Before going on with this section, it should be said that to divide civilization from nature, walls are a very important element, since they are a clear division between what is civilized and what is wild. As Harrison himself said, walls no less than writing define civilization. In the forest, there are two types of abodes, both in the real world and in the fantasy world. Some are not integrated into the environment, and some there are. Woods and forests and Middle-earth serve as dwelling places. However, some of them are integrated and some are not. In the case of the Elven King's Halls and Tom Bombadil's house, as we will see later, they are not integrated at all. They are a rupture with the environment. And Caras Galadhon, the place where Galadriel lives, is truly integrated into the environment. The House of Bern is a special case, because although there's a clear division, it is true that to a certain extent nature lives therein, inside the premises. So the Elven King's Halls. Elves do not harm the environment. They alter nature to suit their needs. They are just stewards of the land. Before Sauron came, the elves lived in the open. However, due to the present state of turmoil in Middle-earth, they are obliged to live in caves. As you can see, this is a personal drawing of Tolkien himself. And as you can see, the place has a civilized look. We cannot see the inside, but we can see the entrance gate. The path has been cleared from any vegetation. Then there's a wooden bridge, there's a staircase, and then the door is adorned to a certain extent. So we can see civilized touches to the place. The isolation, comfort, and protection that this place offers is a civilization bubble inside wilderness. Okay, now Tom Bombadil's house. Bombadil's borders has been described as preventing the shadow from entering into his domains. They protect them from Sauron, but I would add that they also protect the house from nature threats, such as the Old Man Willow and the Barrow-wights. The hobbits here benefit from every commodity. They have hot water, cold water, plenty of food, drink, bed, and a cozy fire. So they are allowed to go back to the Shire once again for a limited span of time. Clear limits are established since there's a hedge which surrounds the house. The lawn has been mown, and there's a path which, though rudimentarily, is paved. This is not a continuation of the forest, but a clear rupture. It's just a place necessary for people to, for the hobbits to stay before they continue with the journey. With regards to the House of Bern, it has the aspect of a fortress. It has a high fence which surrounds the property. And however, Bern's house contains nature inside its walls. The place is crammed with wildlife. There are owls, there are dogs, there are sheep, there are horses, and also forest flora. There are dead trees, which are the pillars of the house. However, at night, Bilbo listens to the sound of the branches moving. Also, he listens to the sounds of the owls. The moonlight enters through a hole on the ceiling. And also there's a kind of garden inside the house. Nature is mostly outdoors, but it's also allowed inside. This offers a unique experience of being able to live in the wild, offering some protection to a certain extent. And then, lastly, Caras Galadhon. It can be seen here that the land has been tamed, that it has the appearance of gardens. As described by Dickinson and Evans, they claim that this is a stronghold. However, I would say that although there is presence of civilized elements, such as a moat, a wall, the flats on top of a tree, which are wooden platforms, a house, I would say that, for instance, the wall is green, so made up of plants. It doesn't mean a rupture. It's very much integrated into the landscape. Then I would say that the moat can be a flowing river. The house is more a center of diplomacy rather than a real house where Galadriel and Celeborn receive the visitors. And the flats are hardly seen from the bottom. So the physical environment and the elven structures are very much in line, and they are hardly distinguishable. Therefore, they are integrated into the forest. Lastly, the last section, the white tree, one of the cornerstones of Gondor. Well, trees have a great importance throughout the book, but the white tree of Gondor, it's its culmination. One of the proofs is that its inclusion in the chronologies. The book includes some chronologies of important events and important historical characters who lived throughout the ages, and the tree is included. The tree represents the growth of a family or its destiny, according to Bates, or a city, community, nation, power of a king, represented by trees in the Dictionary of Symbols. It is a clear representative of Gondor's identity. When Sam Frodo asks Smeagol about Gondor, he answers them describing the kingdom with a white tree. Also, rhyme law that had been running in Tolkien's head for a very long time, he also included the white tree. So before creating Gondor, he already had in mind that the tree was going to be a central symbol here. Tolkien was very fond of lineages, and it is quite telling that he created one for this tree, as well as for other important characters. The well-being of Gondor is very much dependent on the tree. As you have seen the film, the tree is withering whenever Gondor is suffering from a downfall. But not only that, the health of the king and monarchical lineages are dependent on the tree. In the past, the chronologies tell that when a king died, the tree withered. So, conclusions drawn from this miscellaneous research from many perspectives, points of view. Elves do not want to live in woods of Middle-earth. This is basically because they do not belong to Middle-earth. They want to go to Valinor, and they need the stars to guide them to go there. So the forest canopy hinders their view of the stars. Also, Tolkien offered an anthropocentric perspective to Western Europeans through many characters and landscapes. The ending of The Lord of the Rings is symbolically and intrinsically connected to a tree, which is the white tree of Gondor. In order the book to finish, the new king needs to find a sapling and plant it in the court of Minas Tirith. And then I think it's very important to remark that Tolkien was very conservative in many aspects of his life. And it's quite interesting that he was kind of precursor of many ecological movements idea before this occurred. He started writing the book in the early 30s when the Green Movement hadn't started. And some of the claims he makes have become tenets for the Green Movement. So thank you very much for your attention. And now, if you have any questions, I will gladly answer them. Thank you very much.